Hi everyone, this is Jill Dehlin. I'm the chairperson for the American Headache and Migraine Association. I'm here with other members of the AMA board and a former member. I'd like to introduce them to you. We have the chair-elect, Eileen Brewer. We have former vice chair Bob Wold behind me. Jamie Valendy, say hi. And Michele Vargas. And what we're going to be doing today is sharing our journey with migraine. We did this presentation on Thursday night, but I accidentally erased it, so we're going to do it again. And we had so much fun doing it that none of us mind doing it again, right? So we are going to spend 5 minutes talking about our journey, how we faced our migraine and cluster disease, and then what we did about it. So first, let me tell you a little bit about AMA. The American Headache and Migraine Association is an organization for patient advocacy and empowerment, and we are available to you can join AMA by going to the American Headache or to amaishope.org and clicking on join, and we'd love to have you join us on this journey with us on our Facebook Live as well. So I'm going to get started. I am an RN. I became chronic in 2006. And the things that bothered me most about my migraine, not only was the pain, but the cognitive problems that came with the migraine, because I was working on a PhD and I wasn't able to finish because of my migraine disease. I saw a headache specialist right away, and we went through all the algorithms, all the treatment methods, tried lots and lots of different medicines, and after 4 years, I was feeling pretty disappointed that my migraine disease was still, I was having attacks almost every day. So on one of my appointments, I mustered up as much courage as I could, and I told him, I want you to either hospitalize me, or I want you to refer me someplace else, because I need to be seen by fresh eyes, because I'm not happy with my care. And that took a lot of courage. I took my husband with me for moral support. So that happened, and I was hospitalized. And what we found out, that a lot of my head pain was cervicogenic, which means that it was generated from my neck, because I have arthritis in my neck. So once we started treating the neck issues with occipital blocks and rhizotomies, I started to feel better. After I was finished with my hospitalization, I sought a physician closer to my home in Lansing, Michigan, and he is also a headache specialist. But the other change that I made was I decided that I needed to find out as much as I could about migraine disease. So not only did I go online to try and find information, I went to Health Central. They had a great group of people on Health Central for migraine support. And through that site, through Terry Robert, I discovered that there was a seminar, a symposium for headache specialists in Scottsdale. So I decided to go to Scottsdale and find out as much as I could about my disease, and I did. I also met Terry Robert, and I got involved with migraine advocacy. And because of the support I got from my physician, from the American Headache and Migraine Association, and other people with migraine, I've been able to get my migraines down to just about 6 per month from being having a migraine almost every day. One of the things that's helped me the most is that I have had an opportunity to use the Cephaly and the Spring TMS, and those things have helped me very much. So on that note, I am going to turn it over to Michele. So Michele is going to take a seat right here. Thank you, Michele Vargas.
Hi, good morning, good morning. You'll have to forgive all of us because we are those who deal with migraine disease and cluster, and so we do have a lot of cognitive and word finding issues, so it doesn't matter whether we're doing a board meeting or not. It's just that's part of our life, and we try to work around it. So we're here to help you guys and understand just kind of a little bit about our stories. My first headache was actually a migraine back when I was 16, and it had lasted for 21 days. And that was something that was quite impactful to me with school as well. But it wasn't very often. It was maybe every 6 months, and it would then be only about 3 days. So, and this was, I won't tell you when, in the 80s. So there was really nothing. It was take aspirin and Tylenol. And then when I was 28, I started having some hormone issues, and suddenly migraines became chronic, and it was every day, and there was just nothing that anyone had. I tried everything the primary care could give me. Specialists were really hard to find back then, and because that was back in '99. So over the years, I did get to meet with specialists and try everything imaginable. Well, now at least I was functioning and going to work every day, though wanting to come home, crawl into a hole, but I was on everything imaginable. Prophylactics, the abortives, injections, nerve blocks, devices, everything. So that was just so I could function, and of course the medical bills are through the roof. Then later on, when we were trying to get pregnant, almost 6 years ago, I worked with a naturopath in conjunction with my specialist in trying to find other alternatives to get off of all those medications, because that was highly discouraged to be on any of that and try to get pregnant. So using the STMS, the spring, whatever it stands for, I forgot, but anyway, STMS, was my bridge, and that was great to try to get off the medications and then go to more of a naturopathic kind of treatment for my headaches. And so that was nice to kind of have a naturopath involved and seeing things from a bigger picture besides the specialist, and trying to address things other than just focus on the symptoms and the pain and whatnot. So that did help make things much more manageable. So even though I could be having headaches every day, but I use things naturally to at least get it down to now only about every, I don't know, couple times in a month. So it's just amazingly different. My advice to you is find a specialist, find other physicians who will work together and try to help address the body as a whole, and see if there's something that you don't know of that's your trigger. Everybody's different, and you can have 10 different triggers. It's not just one. So find those things out, be an advocate for your health. Let's see what else. There's tons of new alternative therapies out there, and other medication treatments. Being involved with ALMA, this group, is very helpful because you can talk with other patients and see the different things that people are on, find out what's their experiences, and maybe try something different that you'd never heard of, or maybe even your physician hasn't heard of, and try to stay with a specialist in headache. They usually are on the up and up with all the new stuff that's coming out and things that are kind of off-label that still can, hopefully help you. Never give up. It's your life, your family's life that's impacted, so you have to stay on top of it and be diligent in finding someone who will listen and who will address things and not just prescribe or ignore you and think it's all in your head. Because I did have that be told to me years ago when I was in my 20s, that it's all in your head. I'm like, yeah, the pain is in my head. You are correct. Let's see. The other thing is our group, and Headache on the Hill is another great patient advocacy group. Headache on the Hill is every February, and they try to have patients who want to let their representatives know about the disease, how it impacts you and your family, economically and physically, and even in just work life. And it's one of the major disability factors that's out there. So we would love to have you join us there and speak to your representatives and have your voice be known. The funding for migraine research in any type of headache disorder is so small compared to the other disorders that actually percentage-wise of how many people are taken out of the workforce for the chronic migraine or any kind of migraine. So come join us. Let's try to work on getting funding for it, and let's find some new medication treatments, things like that, and maybe even a cure. So let's work together and make our voices known. Next is Eileen.
Hi, good morning or afternoon, depending upon what time zone you're in. Before I start, we had a question from the group. Somebody wanted to know the difference in between a neurologist and a headache specialist. The difference is headache specialists are neurologists, but they specialize in headache medicine as opposed to most neurologists. They treat MS patients, they treat people with epilepsy, they treat a lot of patients. Headache specialists specialize in headache medicine. There aren't very many of them in the United States. I think there's like 500 total, so it is tough to find one. If you go to AMF's website, they do have a searchable feature where you can enter in your zip code and it will tell you where you can find a headache specialist or somebody who has studied headaches specifically in your area. And you can find those doctors that will best treat headaches and have more knowledge about headache disorders than just a general neurologist. Because while there are a lot of great general neurologists, they don't always necessarily know everything that there is to know about headache diseases. Most doctors, when they go to medical school, only hear 10 to 15 minutes about headaches in their studies. It's windy out here. So that's why seeing a headache specialist, especially if you are a chronic migraine patient or a cluster headache patient or somebody with a more complex headache disease, it's really important to do that. If you have hemiplegic migraine or something like that, it's definitely something that you want to do. Or if you don't feel like you're getting adequate treatment from your current doctor, seek out a headache specialist. So with that in mind, I'm going to move on. Are there any other questions that I've missed, guys, that you're, okay, great. All right, so I'm Eileen. I started getting migraines. My first attack was when I was 5 years old. I got spinal meningitis, and that was sort of the catalyst that kicked off my journey with migraine disease. By the time I was 15 years old, I had become chronic, but the whole time I didn't know that that's what I was experiencing because I didn't have a diagnosis. My parents thought that I was exaggerating, not wanting to go to school, or just saying that, you know, so you have a headache, here's Tylenol, feel better, go to school, deal with it. When I was in high school, when I was 15, I met a girl who started describing to me her experience with migraine disease, and it was like she was describing my life. And she told me that she had been diagnosed with migraine. And so I went to the library because at the time there wasn't Google. So I went to the library. I read every book I could find about migraine. I read everything I could about migraine. And then at my next pediatric appointment, I said to my pediatrician what I suspected was happening to me. And he listened, and I felt so much relief because it was the first time that I felt that somebody believed me in what I was going through, and it was important. And then he explained it to my parents, so they started to listen to me and believe me. And it was very important to me that, you know, somebody believed me and that I was going to finally get some help. And so my pediatrician referred me to a neurologist that specialized, even though it was in the early 90s, he did know a neurologist that specialized in headache treatment. So I was lucky in that. And I went to see him, and later he retired. But from that point, I was driven to seek out doctors that would work with me on treatments that might work for me. I wasn't super successful in finding new things to work for me. Like when triptans came out, I tried them right away and I was super excited, and they did not work for me, and they still don't. So it was kind of disappointing, but I kept on seeking doctors that would work with me on things that I had read about or things that they had read about that we thought might work. And I still do that. I still advocate for myself heavily. I always want to learn new things about what treatments are available and what other medications or what other treatments might work for me. I've gone through biofeedback therapy and all kinds of different things just on the off chance it might work, because you never know what will help you. So it's always important to advocate for yourself. And then when I was in my 30s, I started to think, well, what can I do for other people in this community? There should be help for people like me, so that people who have gone through what I went through won't have to have it as rough as I did. Pardon me, it's dry here. And so I started looking around in my community and on Google, because it existed then, for organizations that would help headache patients. And I found that the American Headache and Migraine Association was just forming. So I came to their conference. I'm so sorry. I met Terry Robert. I met Bob Wold, who you're going to hear from in a minute. And that changed my life too, because then I got to meet all these amazing people and help all these amazing people. And it's really an exciting time for our whole community, because so much is changing now. So that's my story. And next up is Jamie Valendy.
Hi, I'm Jamie. I started getting migraines when I was a child, but they turned chronic after a car accident in my early 20s. I started seeing a neurologist who referred me then to a headache specialist. After seeing the headache specialist for about 7 years, he told me that he was out of treatment options for me to try. We had just tried so many that he had run out of the resources that he had to offer. So I continued the treatment options that were available, and continued learning online through AMA, the American Migraine Foundation, and other online resources about newer treatments that were going through approval phases. So I continued treatments that weren't managing my pain very well. It was overwhelming to think about starting over with a new doctor, processing that we had run out of options with the doctor that I had been working with for so long. So at that point, I had learned that there were newer options out there, but my doctor had run out of options to provide me. So I took that opportunity to seek another opinion, to get a different perspective, and to have some different treatment options. So I've started with a new headache doctor, and I'm really excited to see where that goes and where that takes me. Let's see, I'm going to check real quick and see if we have any questions before I pass it off to Bob Wold. All right, here is Bob.
Okay, well, good morning, and my story is a little bit different than everybody else's, because mine started 40 years ago, probably before most of these people you've heard from were born. So I was outside playing football with my young son, and I got hit with the worst head pain I had ever felt, or any pain at all in my head. I really thought my head was going to explode, and wasn't sure what it was. And while I was trying to figure out what it was and survive it, it ended like 45 minutes later and didn't come back for a while. So I had to try to figure out what was going on, because then they did start coming back a couple times a day. So I went to my doctor and started that process. So it took 4 years to find out what I was actually suffering from. Every time I would be prescribed a medication to treat what we thought that it was, I'd be on it for a couple months and the clusters would go away, and we thought that we had either cleared up the sinusitis or sinus infection or whatever it may have been. And then it would come back again. So I started a journey of seeing different people. Went to the dentist a couple times, had some root canal work done and teeth pulled, and that didn't work, and went to an ophthalmologist, and that didn't work, and ended up at a chiropractor who told me that if he couldn't cure me, that I was probably going to die from a tumor. So after 3 treatments, my clusters were worse, so I figured for sure I was about to die, and went in and had a lot of tests and went to see a different doctor, and that's when I was told that I had cluster headaches, which I had never heard of before. I had no information on them. And the person that I had seen really didn't know anything about them. So I tried to find out what it was that I had, and went online. And at that point in the life of the internet, there wasn't very much online at all. So there was no information at all there to be found. Ended up on a message board for people with cluster headaches. That was the first one that ever was available for people. And started working in the community, which at that point was very small. I think that it started out with about 6 of us on this message board, and trying to help each other and trying to trade little tips and tricks that we had found that helped. But over the next 12 years, I tried 70 different medications and hundreds of combinations. None of them worked. And so I was still searching for something that might help. And through this community where we were sharing different ideas, some of us found something that made a profound change in the way that we could treat our headaches. And we were all doing much better. So although there was no information out there and nobody else knew about this. So this was something that was sort of such a profound change for everybody that about 15 years ago, I formed Clusterbusters with the purpose of pushing for more research for cluster headaches, because at that point there was really nothing going on. They've changed their thoughts on what type of headaches cluster headaches really are since then several times. I mean, there were vascular headaches, and then they were called neurovascular headaches, and then they found out there was some additional activity in the hypothalamus, so now they're finding a new spot in the brain. So at that point they were still searching to find out where they were really originating from. But once I started forming Clusterbusters and working in the community, what we did find was when somebody finds something that helps them, they know how much it can change their life, no matter what it is, even if it's drinking an energy drink or whatever can make some small change. The best part of that is when you share it with a community, you found something that helps yourself, and maybe you've just shared information that can help another 1,000 people or 10,000 people, which is very rewarding, and really drives everybody else. And it does give you some empowerment to take some control of your condition and be able to help other people and help everybody in the community. And at the same time, learning and training the medical community and working with them so that they know what helps us. So with all the advocacy work we're doing, we're knocking on every door from Phoenix to Washington, D.C., and demanding help and demanding more research. And what we find is that we are able to make changes and make improvements for the entire community, which really empowers all of us to have hope, because it is something that we can really hold on to. It's not just a prayer for hope. It's an actual palpable true thing that we have, because we know that we do have some control and can make things better. And over the last 40 years, things have gotten much, much better for people with cluster headaches. And a lot of those improvements came from the community and people with clusters advocating for themselves and everybody else in the community. So I would certainly recommend advocacy work for everybody with clusters. It can give you something to hold on to and help yourself and everybody else in the community. So look forward to following the story on Facebook Live here and answering questions later on. So let's see, back to Jill, and she can wrap things up for you. Thanks.
Yeah, come around. Come on, folks. I'm probably not the best person to wrap things up today because I had a migraine this morning at 2:30 and I'm a little hungover from that. But I do want to thank all the people that participated in this Facebook Live, Eileen and Bob and Michele and Jamie and Jamie's husband, Jeremy, for holding the table, which is very wiggly, and thanking Move Against Migraine for sponsoring this Facebook Live for us. So in summary, you've heard lots of stories. We've all had different journeys, but we've all been able to empower ourselves by advocating for ourselves and not taking no for an answer. So continue to seek your own answers. Don't give up. There are new treatments coming on the market, on the horizon very soon, that may help. There are always treatments that are available to people that perhaps your physician hasn't thought about. The group support that you get from groups such as AMA and Move Against Migraine and Health Central Migraine are all very valuable. But we've all tried lots of different things, and none of us are cured, but we're all living our lives, and we appreciate each other for the support. So, and we appreciate you for listening. And do you have any other things to add behind me?
Watch our schedule for our conference that'll be in San Francisco. Love
Right.
to have you learn lots of new things.
Good. Thank you very much. Goodbye, everybody.